Hi, everybody. Today I'm here with Nicole Rueth, and we are talking about the hot topic at the moment, which is everyone's property tax valuations that are coming out. And I know a lot of people are wanting to do appeals and what does that process look like, and just trying to educate yourself about what you need to know going forward. And so, Nicole, why don't you give us a little bit of background on what you're seeing in the market as far as the property tax valuations and the appeals as well?
So the property tax valuations happens every odd year. So 2023 and the previous one was 2021, and it covers the 2 years prior, not calendar, but from July 1st to June 30th of the 2 years. So in 2023, it goes July 1st, 2020. I had to think about this. My backwards math isn't as good as my forwards math. It goes
Yeah.
July 1st, 2020 through June 30th, 2022. So that's the 2 years, but it's through the summertime. As you can imagine, it gets a little confusing. So when you talk about the fact that this time we peaked right during that time, depending on your neighborhood, your property values peaked in April, May, or June. So right at that tail end of this assessment period. The last time we did a tax assessment, it was 2021, and the 2 years prior to that, we had a normalized. In fact, 2019 we had 2% appreciation. So it was so much lower, and our tax rate, as low as it is, it's one of the lowest in the country. So we had really nothing to complain about until this year. Because remember, in the Denver metro, we saw a 44% increase. We slid back about 7% the second half of 2022. And then the first quarter of this year was a slow start. You can't count any of that slide back towards the appeal process for the new property tax valuations you got in the mail. And we all got them.
Yeah, we did. And I think for a lot of people, and we have talked about this, it's like, it does suck. It's shock value, right? Like we were talking about one of my properties that went up 400,000. But at the end of the day, it is an accurate assessment. And is that what you're seeing to be true with other people as well?
I'm seeing it's in an accurate ballpark. I'm seeing that there are some homes, it's guilty by association. There are some homes that haven't been updated, that don't have finished basements where other comps might, where it might not have the upgrade values that other comps have. So I am seeing where certain homes just don't quite fit that bill. I'm also seeing where some homes really didn't quite hit that number. So I gosh, it's hard to throw out a dart. But if I were to throw out a dart, I'd probably say, fully guessing, 60% of them that went out was probably spot on, and another 40% will positive a little or negative a little.
Sure. And as
Yeah.
far as the actual appeal process goes, so you get this
Yeah.
valuation in the mail, and what does that actually look like for people?
So if you get the valuation in the mail, what you're going to do is it will show right there. I got a postcard. Depending on what county you're in, I know Denver sends out full letters with the comps on the back. So depending on what county you're in, you'll either get a postcard or a letter. And on that, it will say the previous year's value and then the current year's value, or the previous periods, I should say, the previous period value and the current period value. And so based on that, you might want to contest right there. But certainly when you see the difference it's going to make on your taxes, you might make that determination. Well, I thought it really didn't bother me. Now I see the number and it does, because it's a big enough monthly payment difference. If you want to contest the value, you have to pay attention. You don't have that much time. Depending on which county you're in, the cutoff date is anywhere from June 1st to June 30th, is what I've heard, depending on which county that you're in. And they'll all have a similar process that you can start contesting the value, whether it's online, over the phone, I think, or via mail. And you can certainly go in person as well. So maybe it's online in person. And then they'll give you the website, and then you'll follow the instructions from there. And then they're going to pull up the comps from that period of time. But this is where your relationship with Audrey and her team is super helpful to do that background for you before you start to contest something and spend a lot of time on it. If they tell you, you know what, that's actually your value, congratulations, right? Or,
Right.
here are the comps that you can use when that time comes.
So it's a good thing that you bring up comps too, because as realtors, I think a lot of us are wondering, what comps do we use? Like, what are they going to use? Are they going to look at the last 30 days, 90 days, half a year? Because obviously we know that makes a big difference. And even though the market has been significantly slower than it was obviously during 2020 and 2021,
Yeah.
we've still seen appreciation and stuff in the last couple months. So really, where should we be looking for those comps, and what are they going to be looking to use as comps?
Yeah. So you're going to want to look at the first and second quarter of 2022. Remember, their period stopped June 30th. So you have to go back. And if you pick out something from January, which was still high in value, or even 2020 or 2021, the further back you go, the less realistic that you'd actually win that battle. You really probably want to go 3 months from the end of June. So really you're looking at that April, May, June timeframe of 2022.
Okay. And they're using, and I think they're sending them out with the valuations, but they're using like a formula, a calculator to figure out the difference, right? What does that calculation look like?
So they're sending it out. The postcard or the letter that you would have will say what the previous period's value was and the current period's value. And then they'll tell you what the tax rate is. So you're going to want to go to the tax rate, and you can do a calculation to determine what your tax bill is going to be. The value is right there. So say you bought a home, and say you bought it 5 years ago and it was 600,000. And now they're saying that the current period value is 850. And maybe you agree with that because you've seen what the market's done, or maybe you don't. You're like, well, but my neighbor just sold for 750. Well, but they just sold, or a neighbor sold last June at the height of the market when buyers were still paying 50, 100, $200,000 over asking. It's really deeply unfortunate, the timing. So you have to go back to that period, and to determine if that value is appropriate. Then from that value, you can assess, how is this going to affect my pocket? Like, well, how much money am I going to have to pay this year versus last year? So you have your last year's tax bill. If you don't have it in hand or in your house, you can get it easily online. They keep a record. You go up to your county and you look up your address or your last name, and you can pull up your last year's tax bill. So you take the postcard or the letter from this time, you take the assessed value, and you multiply it by the tax rate. Then you have to multiply it by the mill levy. That's not on the letter or the postcards. You actually have to go to the website. And mill levies are dependent on, there's a lot of things that go into it, whether it's the school district, if there's any natural elements to any of the assessments that go into the mill levy, whether you have like a wild park or something within your county or assessment. The emergency services have fees that they collect through the mill levy. So that mill levy has a percentage, and you'll have to get that from the county website. And that's actually based on your area. So they'd actually have a grid based on the area you live in, because you might be in the same county, but in different school districts or different emergency districts that have a different service level and different mill levy taxes as well. So that takes a little bit more squirreling. And you get that, and you divide it by 1,000, you multiply it by, so the value of the home times the tax rate times the mill levy divided by 1,000 gives you what your annual tax bill is going to be.
And then you can look at the difference between what you were paying previously to see if it's worth actually disputing.
That's right. That's right.
Okay. And I think it's just important to remember too. It's like, yes, we talked about, it is a big shock, obviously, to get this in the mail and to know that your value has gone up so much, but we knew this was coming, right? Like our values have gone up. And we had talked about too, one of the unfortunate side effects of this is going to be that rental prices are going to increase again. And because now we have all these landlords that are going to be paying higher property taxes that are going to pass that right on to their tenants like they do with everything else. And so I think it's, even more important, even, sellers are obviously impacted by this, but buyers are impacted by this too, because now you have, if they're in this position where they're renting, it's like, okay, now their rent's going to go up. Now it makes even more sense to look and be like, okay, is this a time now I want to buy? Having
Yeah.
said that, though, with property taxes going up, people that are purchasing at their max, limit are also going to be impacted by this as time goes on. So have you
Yeah.
seen any buyers like recently that that are at the kind of on their upper end and this would really impact them as far as their purchasing power?
We are seeing that. And the title companies are now already starting to use the prorated taxes for next year. Because remember, especially here in Colorado, property taxes are paid in arrears. So if you are going to buy a home today, the seller would pay for the previous year's taxes through June. So half is due in February and the second half is due in June, and then it's kind of done. And then the buyer is paying the prorated taxes for the rest of the year based on the assumption of what the taxes will be next year. Well, typically we don't see this kind of jump. A lot of times you might even just use the last tax bill to determine what that is, because the tax bills themselves telling you what that annual payment is going to be won't come out until closer to the end of the year. But the title companies are going in right now, and it makes sense because the difference is so big. They're going in and they're doing that calculation of the value times the tax rate times the mill levy calculation to determine what is the best assessment of what that annual amount is going to be. So you might be just qualified at 600,000 and that was your maximum. But if I now tack on the new tax bill, you might have dropped to 575 or 550. And if you're getting close, and if you were already under contract and the letters just came out and now the new tax assessment is going into place with the title companies, you could find that you don't qualify mid-contract.
Yeah, which would be extremely unfortunate, but it
It
does
would.
happen, right?
Yes.
What about escrow accounts as far as like for the year going forward? They're based obviously on previous tax rates. So are we seeing that people are going to be short in their escrow accounts going forward?
So everybody, now that the new, what you're not going to see is mortgage companies reassessing your escrow accounts based on the letters. They're going to wait. So everybody will get that letter from their escrow company or from their mortgage company, sorry, with the new escrow balance the beginning of next year after they pay that first bill. So they're going to get that bill for your new property taxes. They're going to have to pay the first half, which is due in February, and you're going to get that balancing of the escrow account letter that says, hey, we need to catch up for this year's bill and we need to catch up for next year's bill. So if you own a home, it is really important that you go through this process and at least wrap your head around, forget about the mill levy, to be honest, right? So you could go down that path, but if you just take the previous value and the current value and you multiply it by the tax rate, it does change from year to year. It's not going to give you an exact, but if you just take those two numbers and just multiply it by that tax rate to go, oh my gosh, it's this much of a difference, I better start putting away a little money in my savings account, knowing that escrow letter is going to be coming.
Exactly. The last thing we want to be is surprised right after the holidays, right after, yeah, when we're already, already hurting a little bit. So, well, Nicole, this has been super helpful and great information for both
Yeah.
our sellers and our buyers, right? And just something good to know going forward. So if you guys have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out to either Nicole or myself so we can help you with one, those valuations, and two, just helping to make sure that you're prepared going forward for all the changes that are going to come. So thank you for joining us today, and we will talk to you all soon.